Hello children, for today's Maths No Problem lesson, again we are looking at 3D shapes, and it'd be really useful if you could find some objects in your home that are similar in shape to these, which is a cube shape box I've got. Remember we used these yesterday. If you don't have them, I've attached some nets to 3D shapes that you could print off, and hopefully Mummy or Daddy would cut out and help you put together. But you need a cube shape to help you with your work today. And as yesterday, a cuboid shape, like my box of tissues here. Okay, if you haven't used your mislaid your cuboid from yesterday, you can use the same one or go on a scavenger hunt once you've paused the video. You also need a new shape called a prism, okay, which looks like my chocolate bar here. Okay, can you see the shapes at either end? Okay, we call these faces, flat faces. So you can see my prism's got a triangular flat face here, the triangular flat face here, and then rectangular faces here, here, and here. And it's important that you have these shapes, that you can count those, as well as today, vertices and edges. Okay, and then the final shape, which I found really hard to find in my house, was a pyramid. So I've ended up showing you a tripod that I used to film on before we went on YouTube. Okay, so those are the 4 shapes I'd like you to have a go at finding if you can, because it will be useful for you to have them in front of you for today's lesson. Okay, and now it's time, as usual, to share the screen so that we can begin the in focus task together. Okay, remember, if you can't find the shapes somewhere in the house, then you can make the shapes using the nets that I have attached to this tapestry post. Okay, so we have lesson 2 on 3D shape, page 86 in our textbook 2B. And we've got Ravi here helping us with the in focus task. Ravi says, touch the edges and vertices of the shapes that you have found, just like I showed you on the prism. Look for flat faces. And what shapes are the flat faces on your objects? It's asking the shape of the faces. And if we go through this together with Let's Learn, it'd be useful if you had your shapes with you. So we start with Sam, and he's got a box shaped like a cuboid, and he's telling us the cuboid has 6 faces. Check that your cuboid has 6 faces, and that the faces are squares. I can see a square at this end, and I'm sure there's a square at that end, and rectangles. Okay, these longer faces here. And Sam wants you to count the number of edges and vertices of your cuboid too. This is quite important for your guided practice task. So remember where the vertex, what a vertex is, and count the vertices and the edges on your cuboid. And then Hannah wants you to do the same for the cube. She says this toy block is shaped like a cube, and the cube has 6 faces, just like the cuboid. The faces are squares. So Hannah tells us that the cuboid and cube both have 6 faces. But how are they different? So look very carefully and you'll see that the cuboid has some faces that are rectangular. In fact, even these might be rectangles on your cuboid, because they are on mine. And the cube itself only has square faces. That's what makes it a cube. Again, count the number of edges. And you can see the edges marked in a black line here to show you where the edges are, and you're going to count all the edges on the cuboid and all the vertices. And then you move on to your prism, okay, like my chocolate bar. But Holly has got a tent. I don't know, I wouldn't be able to fit a tent in my study. The tent is shaped like a prism. The prism has 5 faces. Again, check that on your prism, and don't forget to count either end. The faces are triangles and rectangles. I can see a triangle here, and I know there's a rectangle at the other end. And then the triangle at the other end, and these are rectangles. So triangle at each end and a rectangle on the other faces. And then Holly asks you also, how many edges and vertices are there in this prism? And again, points to an edge, points to the vertex here, but you have to count them all. And finally, we have Charles with his toy shaped like a pyramid. Wish I had a toy shaped like a pyramid. It would have helped, wouldn't it? Because my tripod is not a perfect pyramid because, of course, the faces weren't closed like this. But hopefully you have found a pyramid or made one with the 3D nets provided. And the pyramid has 5 faces. The faces are triangles, okay, and squares. Well, 1 square at the bottom. Again, Charles says, can you count the edges and the vertices of the pyramid? So take your time with that. Really take your time exploring all of those shapes. It's important that you understand how many faces and the shape of the faces, how many edges and how many vertices these shapes have. When you're ready, you can move to the guided practice where you're matching these objects with the name of the shape that they are like. So let me demonstrate with the first one. The first one says cone, so I would join the cone up with the picture of the cone. Do you see? And you're going to do the same for cylinder, cube, cuboid, prism, and pyramid. I think you're whizzed through that. But the next task was the task I was explaining earlier on, where you have to complete a table naming these 3D shapes. And don't get tricked, children, by Maths No Problem, because they might be trying to trick you on this table. Hope you aren't going to fall for their tricks. And name the shape, and then how many faces, how many vertices, and how many edges, and you write the number in those boxes. The answers are on tapestry, okay? So you can check and change if you need to before you move on to worksheet 2, pages 70 to 72. Okay, so you're looking at the shape, you're naming it, you're counting the number of faces, the number of vertices, and the number of edges, and recording it on the table. And then you go to your workbook. And first of all, you've got there's lots of words here, so I will read these for you. Okay, so they're on the video if you need to refer to them if your grown-ups are busy today. So fill in the blanks with the correct name of the solid. Okay, so the name of the shape. The solid has 8 vertices. Okay, 8 vertices. You know what that means? It has 6 faces and all the faces are squares. So children, remember, you've counted the faces of the shapes, you've counted the vertices. Okay, so the word solid is just the name for the 3D shape. So you need to name it there. Okay, and don't forget to go back and check what you've been doing all along, all through this lesson, is you've been counting edges, vertices, and faces and looking at the shape of the faces. So then the workbook should not be too much of a challenge once you've understood the words, and write the name of that 3D shape in there. This solid has 6 vertices. It has 5 faces. The faces are triangles and rectangles. I expect you know that one straight away. Gives it away when it says the faces are triangles and rectangles, doesn't it? The solid has no vertices and it has no flat faces. Okay, children, now some of the shapes are shapes we studied in our first lesson yesterday. Okay, so there's a big clue for you there. And the next one, the solid has 8 vertices, 6 faces, and the faces are squares or rectangles. And finally, for this table, the solid has 5 vertices, it has 5 faces, and the faces are triangles and a square. Okay, so if you can figure out the description and name the shape here. For this page, okay, again, we've got another one of these tables to complete where you need to make sure, okay, that you've had a very close look at the 3D shape. It will be very, very hard to do if you haven't actually studied the shape, won't it, children? Because you have to describe the shapes by completing another table. Name of shape, number of faces, number of vertices, number of edges. Okay, looking at all of those shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And then finally, on the last page, you've got to match, again, the name of the 3D shape with an object that looks like that shape. All right. And it says you can have more than one answer. So they haven't tried to trick you, have they? They've told you you can have more than one answer. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and I hope you get a good understanding of 3D shapes by actually exploring them.